My next guest is a long-time friend. He's the editor-in-chief of Breitbart.com, New York Times best-selling author of Breaking Biden, exposing the hidden forces and secret money machine behind Joe Biden, his family, and his administration. Alex Marlow. All right.
Andrew, it's always great to talk to you.
I got the book right here. I got the book with my post-it notes. You know the one thing I get from this, and tell me if I'm wrong just to start this off, that Biden is a subpar human being across the board, but had enough ambition and, dare I say, even some charisma to get elected to the U.S. Senate. But he seems to be an envious person of, let's say, a Ted Kennedy.
Yeah, this is a great place to start the interview. And thanks so much for having me on. I always love talking to you and the Salem audience. It's kind of a double whammy for me, two my favorites. I will tell you that researching Joe Biden for over the last year to put together this book, Breaking Biden, which is this is not just some sort of a drive-by, quick, dash-it-off book. There's 1,600 endnotes in here, Andrew, and I took on the project with a team of 5 researchers, all of whom have worked on New York Times #1 best-selling books from Peter Schweitzer. So this is a real serious work of scholarship. At least that's my intention. And one thing that you find with Biden is he is kind of a nasty guy. And what he does is he repeatedly expresses cruelty to people, not just the fact that he's incompetent, leftist, all that stuff, and he can barely get out of bed, all that stuff. Ignore all that. He's actually quite a cruel person. The clearest example is the Navy Jones stuff, where he has a granddaughter who he wouldn't acknowledge until about 3 months ago, and did everything he could to act as though that child was excluded. That's the clearest example that comes to mind, but they come out over and over again throughout the book where people reached out to him trying to get him to show a little bit of compassion, and he never does it. He fails almost every single time to show compassion.
Talk about Chapter 7, China Joe and the Beijing Bidens, and you point out the various entities that were started up by Hunter Biden, one of them being Bohai Harvest and others. Why would China need to do business with Hunter Biden? What does he actually bring to the table? And some might say, well, he's a venture capitalist. Him and Devin Archer, Bob Alinsky, Chris Hines, the stepson of John Kerry. I can't imagine that Xi Jinping and his associates are sitting in their office thinking if they can't get a hold of Hunter Biden, they're not going to be able to open this mine or drill that well or whatever it is.
Yeah, you are over the target because they're not really doing business with Hunter. They're doing business with Joe. And Joe is the president of the United States. And Joe is one of the most deeply connected people on the planet, 50 years of experience. You build a pretty big Rolodex during that amount of time. So the objective is not to get to Hunter. The objective is to get to Joe and American policies and just make people think a second time. And they're not just going for Joe. They're going for the entire Biden apparatus. And I go through so many people, not just the Biden family members who are getting favorable deals with China, but the trick that pretty much every evil entity you can think of around the world has figured out. If you figure out a way to get Biden family members money, then all of a sudden your treatment gets better. The clearest example is Burisma, because that's all on video, where you've got the company, the energy company hires Hunter, knows nothing about energy, and in 2014, pay him $1 million a year was his salary. They start demanding that Joe get the prosecutor fired. They ask a second time, according to testimony from Devin Archer, Hunter's business associate. Lo and behold, Joe not only gets the guy fired, but then he brags about it. It's all there, quid pro quo, favorable American policy in exchange for money going to the Biden family. So Hunter has he's no relevance to this other than the fact that he's clever enough to set up the shell companies in order to get the checks. And that's what we've seen over and over again. And if you look at the opportunities that America has had to push back on China, to slow China's development economically, they're still building coal-fired power plants right now. This whole administration is obsessed with the Green New Deal, with environmentalism, with leftism, Andrew. They're building coal-fired power plants today, the thing that pollutes the most on the planet. The Biden administration, John Kerry, all these hypocrites, they don't care at all. Why? Because the money is there. So they can come to the United States, they can give their talking points, and in the meantime, they're cutting these deals with the Chinese, so they're getting loaded up with cash, and the policy backs it up. The policy's easy on China. That's how Joe's always been.
The shocking thing to me here, Alex, on page 154, this has really jumped out at me. So Biden credits himself with convincing Fisker, a sort of competitor to Tesla, to open their plant in a shuttered GM plant in Delaware. And where did Fisker get part of their capital from? Well, I'm sorry, they got a massive influx of cash from the Obama-Biden Department of Energy, and then they partnered with something called Rosemont Seneca Partners, which just happens to include Hunter Biden as one of the senior partners. So the money flows from the taxpayer to the Department of Energy to Fisker when the stock goes up to Rosemont.
Yeah, and Fisker, which was a huge failure and backed up by the Bidens. Hunter is one of their creditors, by the way. So it's like, I mean, there's one detail after the next throughout the book that you see this stuff that just blows your mind. Hunter got one of the first original Fisker cars. They barely made any, but Hunter got one. And then you wonder why Joe Biden's got it out for Tesla so bad. He's always had his favored people, and Fisker was one of these companies which has now been purchased by the Chinese. They're trying to relaunch it. They're doing a terrible job. But the corruption is so rich, and there was this iconic plant on Boxwood Road, this GM plant in Delaware that Joe Biden used to pass on the way to work. And you know what's there now, Andrew? It is an Amazon plant where robots move around made in China products. And this is all because Joe Biden's policies over the years were just so terrible that GM has suffered. American manufacturing has gone away in so many ways. And even the attempt to revive some semblance of an automotive culture in his Delaware, which Joe cares about, this Fisker entity, it ends up being just another chaotic thing that ends up failing, and the Bidens have their hands all over it.
I'm going to run out of time. I literally just did my argument, my monologue on how Gavin Newsom is encouraging automation by making the $20 fast food wage. There you go. We have about a minute. Build Back Better is actually a slogan from the World Economic Forum. 1 minute to go. Should we be scared about that?
Absolutely. This is one of the narratives that I'm happy to say feels like it's already taking hold, but Build Back Better was straight out of the WEF. The goal is not just a Green New Deal by another name. This is the prescription for a sort of one world government super state that takes over and ends up making it so that Americans are funding entities that they have no idea who these people are. They're unelected. They control your lives. And next up will be a social credit score, a la the Chinese, where you're going to be prevented from doing basic stuff if you don't fit into the World Economic Forum's vision for America. This was always the essence of Build Back Better, and that's why the word got out, which why Biden had to rebrand it. But be careful. It's not going away. It will not go away so long as Joe Biden's in the White House. He has the ambitions for Build Back Better.
You know, I'm telling you, we're going to have to do a second segment because I got so much I want to get to. I want to talk about this this attempt by Joe Biden to create a family that would be the Bidens of Rehoboth, like the Kennedys of Martha's Vineyard and the Bushes of Kennebunkport. But I'm out of time. This is really great stuff, Alex. Thanks for joining us.
My pleasure, Andrew. Why does Joe have a 10,000 square foot house? Why did he have one? Answer that question.
We'll talk about it next time.